I have not done that yet. You are correct. Excuse me. Yep. Waiting about 5 minutes. Is it working? Man. Yep. Multiple things to tell about tonight. The multiplicity of them all is, of course, important. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, almost. Nearly ready. So yeah. All right. Just about a minute away from starting the everything. I know this awkward silence is kind of annoying, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I can hear the bongs of a clock tower just a bit away. And so that can only mean one thing. Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Schlitter, and welcome to episode 20 of Goal to Go Live. Yes, this is a thing. Before we start, a couple of announcements. Number one, so I said I was going to do the Goal to Go Lives on Wednesdays. Yeah, that's not going to be happening for a little tiny bit of the time when we get there. Yeah. So from September to November, there's basically I do a trivia thing every Tuesday night. That's moving to Wednesdays. So I'm going to move this instead of on Thursday nights, because, there's a football game going on during that time. I'm going to move these to Tuesdays. That way I can do it, I don't know where I keep hearing little noises from, but that's not important. Yeah. Anyway, what was the wording I was thinking of? Yes. So, that's gonna happen. That'll be a thing. Number two, though. I'm currently working on a video. It's gonna be out by next week. Third thing. There's gonna be three things. So, also, probably gonna move next week's to Wednesday, because Thursday of next week, I think I'm gonna be doing a little bit of traveling because I got to do some stuff. There will be an episode of Goal to Go out for that week. Hopefully. We'll see about that. Probably, though, I'll find a way to do something, if not a big, long 1 hour one, at least something short to talk about stuff. We'll see what happens. Yeah. So, third thing. That video that I'm currently working on should be out by next week, will be out by next week, that's my deadline. And I've mentioned it prior, but, might as well get some, little bit of attention out for it for right now. Yeah, the editing process is going to be fun, especially because today I found out that my numbers were wrong. Because you see, I had to calculate a bunch of stuff, because basically I decided to say what was every single possibility that Arizona State had coming into their second to last game of the season in terms of winning the Pac-10 title in 1982. And I thought that if they beat Washington, they would lock up the title almost. Well, basically they would lock it up. Turns out they didn't. They didn't actually lock it up. Because if they were to have a loss to Arizona, they could have a bit of a problem. So yeah, if you look at this, there are 9 different scenarios here, because, there should be 9. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's 9. There are 9 different scenarios here, 4 of which are automatic championships. Somehow, Arizona State failed to do that. Now, of course, losing to Washington was probably the hard part, except they were, Arizona State was undefeated, and there's a lot of stuff to discuss with this, but basically, crazy things happened. And, that's it for that little bit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us get into some NFL news. So, Quan Alexander, he was with the Saints last year, and then we cut him because cap reasons. He had a visit with the Saints recently, a few days ago. Is there a potential for a re-signing? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. There's really nothing that's been said yet. Also, speaking of linebackers, Fred Warner, he just recently signed an extension with the 49ers, and not just any extension. Oh boy, was it a big one. 5 years, $95 million. $40.5 million guaranteed. He is now the highest paid inside linebacker in the league. Big for him. And then there was the news from today. The NFL sent a memo to clubs, which sounds about as boring as you might think it does. But trust me, this one's interesting. So I'm going to read it basically outlined some more COVID procedures. The NFL is done with the carrot. They're now using the stick. Here's a direct quote. If a game is canceled/postponed because a club cannot play due to a COVID spike among or resulting from its non-vaccinated players/staff, then the burden of the cancellation or delay will fall on the club experiencing the COVID infection. We will seek to minimize the burden on the opposing club or clubs. If a club cannot play due to a COVID spike in vaccinated individuals, we will attempt to minimize the competitive and economic burden on both participating teams. Another direct quote. If a game cannot be rescheduled within the current 18-week schedule and is canceled due to a COVID outbreak among non-vaccinated players on one of the competing teams, the club with the outbreak will forfeit the contest and will be deemed to have played 16 games for the purposes of draft, waiver priority, etc. For the purposes of playoff seeding, the forfeiting team will be credited with a loss and the other team will be credited with a win. If a game, by the way, so those are two direct quotes. So if a game is rescheduled or forfeited because of an outbreak among unvaccinated players, the team with the outbreak is responsible for any additional expenses incurred by the other team. Yeah, you gotta pay if you screw this up. Yeah, that's what they're saying. Oh, also, Goodell reserves the right to impose additional penalties. Because, as a reminder, the NFL commissioner is God. The big one, and by the way, one of the reasons for this, they actually said directly before that first thing I mentioned. In light of the substantial roster flexibility in place for the 2021 season, absent medical considerations or government directives, games will not be postponed or rescheduled simply to avoid roster issues caused by injury or illness affecting multiple players even within a position group. AKA, we're not going to have your shit. Like, sorry that you don't have any running backs, you still have to play. That's what we had. Like, the Saints had that. It's like, okay, people still complaining about the Kendall Hinton thing. First of all, 100% agree, especially the way they handled that with, like, Drew Lock. Apparently they said, like, oh, he can play, and then the day before they say, yeah, about that, no, he can't. Okay, but at least don't think that the Saints, liked that. A, and B, we kinda got karma, but it was at the end of the season, and it didn't matter, because we won the game anyway, because the Panthers were terrible. Because they also didn't have running backs. Like, it was kind of an easy game. That was an easy game. So, it didn't really matter. And it's not like the Saints were in a great quarterback situation at that time anyway. We had Taysom Hill. He was a wide receiver at quarterback versus a tight end at quarterback. It was a great game. Man. But still, here's the big news. The big deal. The one that's got a lot of people in a tizzy. If a game is canceled and it can't be rescheduled, nobody gets their game checks. Nobody. Nobody on either team. Yeah, this is a problem. Oh, did I mention that it's 2 weeks after the deadline to opt out? Oh yeah, that might be a problem. In fact, that's a major problem. That's one of the biggest issues with this. See, all of this should have been set prior to the deadline to opt out. You shouldn't have said this and then, you shouldn't have just been like, okay, here's the deadline, and then 2 weeks later, just come out with all this stuff that might cause a player to want to opt out. Like, this is inexcusable. And a lot of players are like, man, the NFLPA really screws us. And it's like, oh yeah, they did. They really did. The negotiations that the NFLPA did were awful. My God, was Master P their agent? For those of you who do not understand this reference, Master P was the agent that Ricky Williams had when he negotiated the most team-friendly contract potentially in the Saints' history. This is for a running back who we mortgaged our entire draft and then some to get. Also known as the guy with the most leverage in the history of the NFL, and he signed a team-friendly contract. I don't know how that's possible. And a reminder, it's pre-rookie wage scale. So he could have held out for however much he wanted, we had to pay him. He instead gives us the easiest contract ever that's super flexible. Thanks. Again, this is why you don't let people who aren't legal professionals be your agent. But, that's that. But yeah, the NFLPA sucks. And it has not helped its players. It's a terrible players union. I'm just going to be honest about it. It's a terrible players union. Like, it literally gave in to the NFL. It gave in to the NFL's want to have a 17 and then an 18 game regular season. It gave in to some of these dumb COVID stuff. Some of the really dumb stuff like 34 checks. I think they doubled the number of checks that the players are getting over the season, which is not good because it means they receive less money. Like, overall, they receive less money. That's a problem. But yeah, the NFLPA. It's not been good. This thing, and there are a lot of players who are like, ugh. And then DeAndre Hopkins decided to tweet out freedom with a question mark, and I'm like, I mean, you're free to get the shot or not, and like they're not saying you have to, but they're basically saying you have to. Which, by the way, NFL has all the right to do that. Let's just remind ourselves. Yeah. What is sad? That the NFLPA does not care or is bad? Well, could be worse. Could be a lot worse. There are many worse things out there. But next, I was going to talk about this, so I might as well just get through it. Oh, the players union. Yeah, it is sad. It's pretty bad. It's bad. The players really don't have a great union. Just so lame. Like, and I mean, it's worse because it's like, the players are, I don't know who's representing them, but it's terrible. It is absolutely terrible that they have such an owner-friendly league right now. Because it really should be more balanced, and it's not. And all of this is stuff that, like, if the union was like this in the 80s, there never would have been any strikes. That's bad. Because without strikes, we won't get free agency. We don't get modern free agency. They were apparently gonna strike, and then they just gave in. And it's dumb. Because they deserve far better than this. Because the NFL, literally, they're doing whatever they want. And this is kind of true most players' unions right now. They're not using their power. I mean, the NBA has a great players' association. At least they can use their power. They'll probably use it soon because of the recent spike in injuries. Well, it wasn't necessarily that much of a spike. But, Now, let's talk about something completely stupid. So, Jackson State University. It's an HBCU in Jackson, Mississippi. Their head coach is famous football player Deion Sanders. Yeah. He's their new head coach. He coached there for last season, so he's coming into his second year. And he was at a press conference. It was SWAC Media Days. They do this media week. Every conference does it. All the coaches, they go. They always send a couple players each. It's a really important time because it's like, okay, so we're going to figure out how, especially for like newer head coaches. And yeah, it's always a fun time. So one point, he was taking questions and a reporter called him Deion. Not like Coach Sanders or Coach or something. And, Sanders was like, look, you wouldn't call Nick Saban Nick, he'd cuss you out, which, not even remotely true. There are countless clips of Nick Saban being called Nick and him just accepting it because that's normal. But number two, have you seen a Nick Saban press conference? He wouldn't cuss out anyone. He'd just get angry and passive-aggressive. Like, that's a Nick Saban in general. He gets angry and passive-aggressive basically at the same time. It's always great. But yeah, and then he was like, nah, don't call me Nick. And then the dude called him Nick Dion again, and then Dion walked out of the press conference. Of course, does he really care about that? He said it was about respect. I don't know if it was about respect. I think it was about sending a message. Sending a message to his players to respect him. Sending a message to the media to respect him, which they're not going to because, petty media members. Yeah. But here's the thing. One of his goals when he came to Jackson State was to get people talking about Jackson State. He got people talking about Jackson State. Got people talking about him. Yeah. Alrighty? Jackson State hasn't seen this much media attention since the days of Walter Payton and Robert Brazile. Alrighty? He's acting like a heel and he's getting over. That's one way of thinking about it. There is another way of thinking about it, though, that's a bit more sinister and is also definitely possible. Because you see, Jackson State's been in a bit of trouble recently. Not trouble, more controversy. So, they recently just had an article published. So, there's a local newspaper in Mississippi called the Clarion Ledger. And, one of the reporters, Rashad Milligan, he published a story on Monday about they just got they got the highest rated high school recruit in the history of Jackson State football. His name is Quadarius Davis, and he's a 4-star wide receiver. Now, why did he publish the story? What's so bad about it? Well, because Quadarius Davis was actually originally signed to Kansas. Kansas cut ties with him because he's had a domestic violence charge because he beat up his girlfriend. There are pictures of her with a black eye, and he's been charged. And, Tuesday, Jackson State barred him from covering the team at SWAC Media Days. Interesting how that comes into play. Weird. Weird, isn't it? These two things could not be related. Okay, so I think it's time to get to the most important thing. Time to talk about the SEC. Because the SEC might become a 16-team conference. Because, oh boy, things have happened in the past 48 hours. So, I remember it was a day ago. It was literally a day ago. A friend, he asked me, hey, what about West Virginia in the ACC? Speculative question. Because, possibility maybe they would want to do it because they had an old rival in Pitt and they're in the ACC. Might be a cool idea. So later in the day, the Houston Chronicle publishes a thing. And the Houston Chronicle publishes a thing that the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma reached out to the SEC and inquired about membership. That sent a ball rolling. Yeah, because it turns out that's happening. This isn't like one of those speculative things. It's happening. The way things are going right now, it's happening. Alrighty? Early next week, they're both expected to send a letter to the Big 12 saying they're not going to renew their media contracts when those contracts expire in 2025. And then they're going to get to the SEC. Now, they've had this move, Texas has had this move in mind since they hired Sarkisian, their new head coach. They did that earlier this year. So this is not new. This is very much not new, and they're probably in cahoots with Oklahoma about this move. They're willing, by the way, Texas is willing to scrap the Longhorn Network, which was the whole problem with the Big 12 when this first kerfuffle happened. Oh my God. I thought we were done with this. I thought last decade we were done with this crap, but no. So today, the Big 12, they held a conference call, and they invited every school. A couple of them didn't show up. You want to take a guess at who didn't show up? You want to take a guess? Or not? Because I don't want to make awkward silence forever. Yes. OU and Texas, they weren't there. Funny. So now the Big 12 has been trying to reach out to them because they don't know why they're leaving. If only there was some reason why these two might leave. If only there was some sort... It's money. It's money. It's money. We all know it's money. Everyone knows it's money. It's just money. Okay? They're greedy. They're assholey. That's what they're doing. Alrighty? So, you want to talk about how much money? Okay. So, currently they're making... So, oh my god, I hate this so much. So, first of all, let's talk about what I meant with... I don't even know where to start with this crap. I genuinely don't know where to start with this crap, so I'm going to ask you, where do you think I should start with this? Tiller. Should I start with, like, I don't know, why might they want to move? What this would mean? Something. I don't know where to start with this. Because honestly, there's, like, multiple different starting points I have. Man, dead air sucks. Man, the crickets outside, they make this so perfect. What it would mean. Alright, I'll start with what it would mean. That's a good place to start, because I think that is the best point of contention. So, first of all, what would it mean for money-wise? What would it mean for the SEC? So the SEC would have to renegotiate their television contracts. Because their television contracts currently are under the assumption the SEC has 14 teams. This would make it a 16-team conference. They would want to renegotiate that deal because they realize, oh, we're worth a ton more money. So if they renegotiate that deal, they're expecting to have every school make about $10 million more than they already make. The SEC already generates a bajillion dollars in revenue. Here's how much they have. So they... earlier this year, just gave their schools like $300 million because they had it. It was just like a free here's $300 million because we had it. Because they anticipate, I think it was like some money they had from their revenues and from their TV contracts. That's how much it's worth. I think the average FCC teams get like $40-something million a year or something. Already, by the way. 40-something million already. Which is about 10 million more than Big 12 teams get. That's already 10 million more. So this would bump it up by about 20 million. And note this, by the way, so it should be noted. So, for Texas has the most favorable deal in the history of media and in college football history. Because the way it works is, so back in the early part of the decade, so I mentioned that Texas has the Longhorn Network. They're the only school that has this, because they threatened to leave in the early 2010s. So the Big 12 used to have more teams in it. It used to have 12 teams in it. The name used to be reasonable. There used to be, some teams in it included Nebraska used to be a part of it, Colorado used to be a part of it, Texas A&M used to be a part of it, and Missouri used to be a part of it. That's 4 teams. They replaced 2 of them. But, then, all of a sudden, Texas gets this wide idea of, we want more money. Because they're greedy. Also, because the college football landscape was changing at that time, they realized they could get it. So, they basically threatened the Big 12 that, hey, if you don't let us do whatever we want, we're going to leave. So they gave them the ability to form their own network with ESPN, called the Longhorn Network, and Texas receives more money than any other school. They get a bigger share of the pot. They control everything. You wonder why Texas A&M left. You wonder why Missouri left. You wonder why Colorado left. Nebraska leaving kind of made sense because they also wanted they wanted to do it for academic reasons. Same with Colorado, actually. Those two left partially for academic reasons, but Missouri and Texas A&M did not leave for academic reasons. Otherwise, they wouldn't have joined the SEC. And so, what you get from that standpoint is you get then Texas being this super massive and important school. So apparently they weren't happy with that. Now I think part of that has to do with the fact that the Big 12 has a god-awful media deal because they didn't make the right one. So you have the SEC network, SEC partnering with ESPN, ACC network, ACC partners with ESPN, Big Ten network, Big Ten partners with Fox. The Pac-12 network's a joke. That's a funny joke. And then you have Big 12, which doesn't have their own network but has a media deal with ESPN. But it's carried through ESPN Plus, which is extraordinarily stupid, and it does not work for them. So Texas wants to move where they can make a substantial boatload of money. Because one of the things that's... man, this is going to jump all over the place. One of the things that this is expected... the thing about Texas that you have to understand is that Texas knows what it's worth, too. Texas may be greedy, but it also knows it's worth a lot of money. Because Texas is one of the biggest brands in all of college sports. Like, it's really big. And in Texas, it's really big. In the state of Texas, like, the Longhorns are big. The biggest. So they know what they're worth, and they want to be paid like it. So I honestly get that. Oklahoma comes with them, by the way, because number one, classic rivalry, but number two, they are worth it too. Oklahoma's worth it. They got the everything. They got the history. The football team is just absolutely enormous. And if Texas were to leave, the Big 12 would be left with one team that can make up any sort of revenue. Now it's left with zero. So, man, what this means now is for the SEC, it means that it would be a 16-team Super League. What that would likely mean for football, we'd see eight teams per division. We'd see the SEC West shift a little bit. So OU and Texas would be in the SEC West. They'd probably move Missouri to the SEC West, and then they'd move out Alabama and Auburn into the SEC East. Then what would likely happen is you'd see an expansion of the SEC football schedule, because right now it's at 8 teams, so it would probably be that we'd see either a 9 or potentially a 10-game conference schedule where you'd play all your divisional opponents, and then you'd play other teams from the other division, and there wouldn't be a permanent rotation like there is right now. That would be scrapped. They've been telling people like we're going to scrap this for a while. They mentioned it here. Yeah, because again, that's another thing. So this is where I'm going to shift it to what does this mean for the Big 12? The Big 12 isn't exactly that big. So you have Texas. Texas is by far the biggest brand in the Big 12. Then you have Oklahoma. Oklahoma is by far the second biggest. Then there's a drop-off. Third place is definitely Kansas. Kansas has the basketball pedigree. Frankly, they are very valuable for that. Their basketball team's absolutely enormous. It's something that's super enticing for any conference that would want to take them. I genuinely don't know who's fourth, because you don't have that many big-time teams. The teams that you have remaining in the Big 12 are West Virginia. West Virginia would actually... I'd say West Virginia would be fourth. I'd say West Virginia's fourth, just because they at least have the balance of basketball and football. So West Virginia's fourth, and then you have a severe drop-off into the 6 teams that I almost call the Limbo 6 at this point. The Limbo 6 or the Limbo 5. It depends on how things work out. So the way it would look is that when you get down to those 8 teams remaining in the Big 12, which would basically become like a Big 8, you have West Virginia, Kansas State, Iowa State, and then... West Virginia, Kansas State, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Baylor, I can do this, Oklahoma State, and TCU. There we go. Got him. Okay. So you look at those teams. Not all of them are actually big time. West Virginia is big enough, they'll probably make a move to the ACC. I should mention this. The Big 12 would be dead. There's literally no way you could call it a power conference anymore, and it would splinter in half. It would splinter as a result of this. Like, Texas and Oklahoma are keeping it together. Because honestly, it comes to the point where you recognize, oh crap, power conference teams don't actually mean that much, except for certain ones. So for example, Kansas has its basketball program. Whoever wants to find Kansas will find a suitor. West Virginia, hey, the ACC's there, makes geographic sense. But then let's look at the rest of them. TCU only just became a power conference team not even a decade ago. They haven't been a member of this conference for more than a decade. Like, I don't think they joined it until 2012. And I'll double check right now because frankly, I did not write that down. Because I'm dumb. Yeah. Yeah. But TCU was like a smaller conference team. They weren't a power conference team for a little while. In the entire history of the BCS, they were a power conference team for 3 years. They joined the Big 12 in 2012. They joined the Big 12 in 2012. Yeah. That's right. 2012. Yes, that's not good. Now, granted, they were a part of the Southwest Conference, which actually broke up in 1995, because I forgot that was 95. I thought it was 91. Which, by the way, 25-year anniversary was last year of the end of that, and great job, guys. Which, by the way, was also broken up by partially as the result of Texas wanting more money. So, figure that out, why don't you? Yeah, Texas tends to be a little bit of a thing. But also it was because Arkansas joined the SEC and this, that, and the other thing. But still. So, you have TCU. TCU trying to find a landing spot, that's going to be tough. Because I think they genuinely fall to the American. And their whole cycle goes over again. You have Texas Tech. I don't know where the hell they go. They're like borderline power at that point. Kansas State, I don't know what happens with them. Iowa State, there's a chance they move to the Big Ten because they have a really good academics. They're a member of the Association of the AAU, which I don't remember what that stands for, but it's big time. Like it's where the good schools are. Good schools are a member of that. So that's probably what happens there. Let me think. What else? Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is screwed from this. Oklahoma State's nothing. Like, Oklahoma State's going to realize, oh, crap. Oh, we don't have anything to offer whatsoever besides a wrestling program. That's it. They're an okay in both things. They're okay. Do you have, what else? Baylor? I don't know what happens to them. The rest of the 8 teams that are a member of this conference, the 6 teams, the Limbo 6, as I'm calling them, I don't know what happens to them. They're thrust into a situation where, until 2025, they're basically kind of sort of stuck, and they don't know where they're going. They have nothing to cope. They just have to remember, the only thing they have is their current reputation. And it's pretty sad to think about it this way. It's not just any frog, it's a horned frog. Well, nah, you can't not be in a you can't, because you need to be in a conference for, like, if you want to make an automatic bid to the NCAA basketball tournament, you got to be in a conference. Teams aren't, it's not like the 1980s anymore. You got to be in a conference at this point. Like, I think Kansas, the way that one theory I've heard is that Kansas might join the Big East and then go independent in football because their football team sucks, which is reasonable. But no, if you're like a TCU, you need a conference. If you're a Texas Tech, you need a conference. Now, what is a theoretical possibility? I don't know. This is ridiculous because this create a 33rd conference. 30 because there are 32 currently. This would create pretty much a 30th. No, it wouldn't create a 33rd. I'm an idiot because the Big 12 just wouldn't exist. What could theoretically happen is you would start a new round where maybe it would reform with new teams. I'm thinking Cincinnati would come in, potential for UCF, and then they'd have to reform it. But even then, no one would take it seriously. No one would take it seriously because it doesn't have a school that has that kind of pedigree like a Kansas, an Oklahoma, or a Texas. Because the Limbo 6 are the Limbo 6. Or the Limbo 5 we'll see with Iowa State. But they're stuck because Oklahoma and Texas want more money. I'm an LSU fan. Looking at this, I mean, I wouldn't mind it. Having Texas come here once every other year, I mean, I wouldn't hate it. But there's somebody who does hate this. There is someone who does hate this, and that's Texas A&M. Why does Texas A&M hate it? Because they don't like competing with Texas. Because they have to compete with Texas now. They would have to compete directly with them for recruits. That's not fun. When you're the only team in a conference in your state, that's a big advantage. Take LSU, who literally enjoys this advantage. Take Arkansas, who doesn't succeed, but used to. There's an advantage to being the only team in your conference in your state. Take Florida. Florida's the only team in the SEC in the state of Florida. Yes, Texas A&M is in the SEC. They were one of the 4 teams that left the Big 12 because of Texas. They sought refugee status from Texas. And then Texas came in like the invading Soviet army. I don't know if that's an apt World War II reference, so I guess I'm going to stop there. But still. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. But the thing is, this is happening at possibly one of the worst times. Because we now have a massively unstable NCAA. And this brings me to my second point. Mark Emmert is the president of the the NCAA. He used to be the president of Louisiana State University and the University of Washington. And he was talking to some reporters last week, like on Thursday of last week, and said some things. So here are some things that he said, and let's talk about them and my thoughts about them. So he was talking about how it might be the right time to look at decentralized and deregulated version of college sports with more power to conferences and schools. So when you have a conference shift going on, and you're also shifting more power to conferences, that's going to cause some stuff. That's a massive foundational shift. So that's why I'm saying, right now, it's could you guys have waited for the for the entire NCAA not to be in a massive freaking disaster mode? Come on, guys. You could. It's poor timing. So here's some quotes from Mark Emmert. When you have an environment like that, the one that's currently existing, it just forces us to think more about what constraints should be put in place ever on college athletes, and it should be the bare minimum. Man, wouldn't it have been nice if you'd have said that 10 years ago? Or were you there 10 years ago? 5 years ago when you were there. We need to be ready to say, for field hockey is different than football. Wrestling is different than lacrosse. And get so hung up on having everything be the same. He said that sports serve different functions at different schools, and the NCAA needs to govern in a way that's more reflective of that, adding that the NCAA shouldn't shy away from the fact that a small percentage of athletes are using college sports as a path to the pros. And that's great! Why the hell couldn't you have said this beforehand? Because this is the obvious. Here's more obvious. We need to embrace that. And with NIL out there, we're providing other opportunities around this whole notion of using college sports as a career launching pad. Yeah. Wouldn't that have been nice to do earlier? It's funny how he's just saying this right now when he realizes, yeah, my job is meaningless. I can be bought out in like a year. I really don't have a point. He said also, I think this is a really, really propitious moment to sit back and look at a lot of the core assumptions and say, if we were going to build college sports again, and in 2020 instead of 1920, what would that look like? What would we change? What would we expect or want to be different in the way we manage it? And this is good. This is the right time. It's pretty brilliant. I like it. Let's be honest. If you think NIL stuff is going to ruin competitiveness in college sports, I have some bad news. Okay? Because of the 351 full Division I members, there's 192 that have yet to win a D1 national championship. What is college sports beside a career launching path? A way to pay for college. Literally, for some people, it's the only way they can pay for college, or a way to help pay for college, or a way to continue your dreams, even though you know you're not going to do that forever. There are people at LSU who will go on after playing at LSU and not play sports. The most obvious example, of course, is gymnasts, who will not be using this to continue being a pro athlete there. Some of them will, and some of them will use it as a chance to be, a star, but, you can't compete at elite gymnastics in, your mid-20s. That's just a fact. But it's a good way to build a brand, potentially build a personal brand, which, by the way, only a few people can actually build a major personal brand. I'm not saying it's impossible to build a personal brand. I'm talking about one on the level of, the big times. But that's okay, because you can still get paid for this shit. And frankly, respect the hustle. Take the money, because frankly, you may never get this kind of opportunity again to get paid for what you love. But still, there's 192 of the 351 full D1 members. It's more than half. They've yet to win a national championship at the Division I level. Will American or Albany or Bryant or Canisius or Chicago State or Coppin State or Elon or Gardner-Webb or IUPUI or Lamar or Morehead State or North Florida or Rider or Siena or UT Martin or Toledo or VMI or Winthrop ever win a D1 natty? Yes, I did that all in one breath. How about it? And the answer is no. It is highly impossible for 95% of those 192 schools. 95% of them are never going to win it. Right? So, is that a bad thing? Hell no. But it's just the way it is. We're not going to expect a team like UT Martin. They ain't never going to win it. They're not going to win it. That's okay. That's totally fine. They don't have to. That doesn't have to be the reason. National championships aren't everything. National championships are not the only thing in college sports. Conference championships are pretty cool. Alrighty? A lot of teams, that's all they got. And that's cool. Going for the conference championship. That's a big deal. Alrighty? What is the point of sports? It's fine. We can reimagine. We can re-examine where everything is. Alrighty? That's totally fine to do that with college sports. Because, take for example, I'm thinking Division II schools, especially Christian schools. They tend to use it as a way of furthering their mission work. They use athletics as a way to further their mission work. What's so bad about that? If that's your point in existing as an athletics program, then fine. Not everyone's there to make money. And just if you are there to make money, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Texas exists as an athletics program right now to make money. That's why they exist. There ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They exist to make money. LSU's exist to make money. We are a sporting club with a university attached to it, and that's not a bad thing. But if we accept that fact now, then we can at least get to where we want to accomplish, where we want to be later. Because, like, we got a new president at LSU, and he's like, LSU is like a dream school. I mean, like, academically it's not, and we never will be, and that's fine, and we don't have to delude ourselves into thinking we are good at academics, because academics aren't everything. Because guess what? You know what we pride ourselves on here? The experience. The allure of what LSU is. You may not, have great academics here, but you'll get a damn good education, and you will enjoy your time here, unless you are a woman, in which case you probably won't, at least according to the statistics we have seen. Because, let's just completely ignore the fact that our Title IX department is garbage. Hey, we're working to fix it. Good, we passed HB 409, which actually puts a lot of power in the hands of the victims, which is awesome. And it's, okay, quick tangent, by the way, apparently that thing has some really cool language in there. One of the things in that bill is that if you are a victim, you are given immunity, which means, like, if you were underage drinking, you don't get charged for that misdemeanor if you were sexually assaulted and you report it, which is logical. And I think that's in I think that's in California or something. There are other states, I think, that have that, but, like, that should be, like, general policy. And the fact that us, a southern state, did that is awesome, and this is cool, and I really like it. HB 409 is cool, and, like, you should totally look into it, and, like, if you don't live in this state, you should call your representative, and if you don't have that kind of a bill, you should call your representative in your state, for your district, in your state, and, like, try and get it passed, because, honest to God, it's, like, really awesome, and, like, I'm super proud, because, the Louisiana legislature wanted to get something good done, as opposed to holding a veto session to try and overturn a bill that was going to ban, trans kids from competing in athletics. A vote that failed by 2, and one that almost forced them to trap themselves in the state legislature because they couldn't get the votes necessary to end the session. I am not making that up. They were almost running out of votes, and they were basically trapped in there for a little bit. Good. Yeah, it's really awesome. It's really awesome from what I've read. I really and genuinely am, like, stupidly for it. And I would fight more for it. However, if I'm going to fight for any sort of legislation, it's going to be more for things like mental health, and, helping people with intellectual disabilities in school, because that's stuff that's actually going to affect, like, that's where I really have my passions. So, like, yeah. It's okay not to be passionate about certain things, because, some things you just can't get that kind of energy for as opposed to other things. And that's just the end of that tangent. But yeah. By the way, on the Alston ruling, the dude, Mark Emmert, he said, you can lean back and do nothing and then just wait and see what happens. Or you can say, look, we're in it. This is a new era. We need to take advantage of it, pivot as much as we can toward the areas I was just talking about, and embrace that change rather than fighting it. You can lean back and do nothing. Wasn't that what you guys were doing until the Alston ruling came down? Yes? It was exactly what you were doing? You literally could have actively been fighting the frickin' NIL rules in California and Florida, and you just did nothing because you thought that Congress was going to do something, which was your first mistake. Congress is going to do something. That's hilarious. So here's some predictions on how things will go. The Power 5 conferences, well, that doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. But let's pretend they exist now. They're going to gain a lot more power and autonomy. There's a reason I believe this. So Greg Sankey is the SEC's commissioner. He told Sports Illustrated, I am highly concerned that we, the Power 5 conferences, are not as effective as we need to be in our current environment. He added to reporters on Monday at SEC Media Days, quote, the expectations, demands, and pressures that are present on the campuses of this conference are not uniform across all of Division I, and expecting every conference to come together to debate, discuss, and produce effective decisions for everyone is not our modern reality. We must begin to adapt. So what this probably means is a shift from the current NCAA model, which the NCAA controls most of the decision-making, to one where the conferences and schools can make their own decisions to fit their own needs, a la the NAIA, which is a great idea. Because, like, the SEC and the NEC, they have different priorities, and that's cool. Hey, it's okay to have a sports program just for the fun of it. It's okay to have a sports program to bring in tuition. That's the point of some of them. And by the way, like I said, I 100% agree with that idea. It falls right in line with the idea that colleges use sports for a variety of reasons. I have said this in the past. I will continue to say it. It's okay. You don't have to make money from sports. But granted, some of the events are like super disorganized and but that's fine. It's fine. Oh yeah, by the way, it probably means we're going to see an end to the universal scholarship limits imposed by the NCAA, because that authority is going to shift to the conferences and the schools, because in the end, the NCAA is going to be a lot less influential. It's going to exist mainly as a confederation whose purpose is to host championships and provide some sort of loose organizational structure for college sports at their level. So when I say scholarship limits, there are 11.7 scholarships available for a 35-man baseball team. The SEC is going to change that. They're going to change that to probably 20 to 30 something. Because, they have the money for it. They might as well. There are only a handful of sports in which every single player on the roster, every single member of the team, gets a scholarship. Like football's one of them, basketball for both men and women. I think women's volleyball is one of them. I think women's ice hockey is actually one of them. I believe women's soccer, but I could easily be wrong. Either way. Yeah. And I think that makes sense. Because, and why not? If the main reason for scholarship limitations for each conference is going to probably be how can we bring in more tuition? Because the scholarship limitations means that you get people on the roster, but they have to pay. They got to pay for college, and that's big time important, because a lot of schools derive revenue just from athletes. See every Division III school that uses almost every Division III school. Most Division III schools, they're 60 to 80% athletes on campus. 60 to 80% of the campus is just athletes, because that's what they exist for. That's the only way, because most of them are private schools. There are notable exceptions, MIT. Yeah, that's a pretty notable exception. But, for the rest of them, yeah. So here's some ideas for what else that could happen. Something is going to happen with that 3-division model. I don't know what, but when Emmert is saying something about it, it's likely going to be talked about. Divisions 1, 2, and 3 are probably going to be stratified a little bit more. Because I don't know how that's going to work out. We'll see. I have no idea on that front. I've read a little bit about the potential for there to be an Olympic model in which there's a minister of football or basketball, which sounds like a thing, but I have zero clue what to make of that besides, That is all I have about that. And then fully professional college sports, that could kind of become a thing. I think that's what NIL is. I don't think the schools are going to pay the kids because, that would be ridiculous. The schools would never do the things that they could use their bagmen for. Seriously, why would you spend your own money? Get someone else to spend the money for you. That's what they do already. Because, like I've said, if you don't think that SEC schools pay players, then you don't know how long they've been doing it for, because it's been since the 50s. When I can tell you that my family knows a thing or two about what it's like to have a coach funnel the money, then I can tell you what it's like. Alright? So, it's a thing that's been going on forever. Texas coming in. Oh man, look, you guys are a brethren in corruption in college sports. Seriously, the Southwest Conference was one of the most cheating-heavy conferences in the entire country in the 1980s. I mean, they were giving away cars, government drug dealers were giving away crack cocaine in black neighborhoods. Man. That better not get me on some CIA watch list. I was just making a joke there. I was clearly making a joke there. But yeah. What else is there to say? I don't know. The NCAA is kind of weird right now. I could definitely see them just becoming less influential, which I wouldn't mind. Because, they've been too influential recently. But yeah. So I'm just going to read. Let's check Twitter to see if there's any more things about this conference call. So here's the thing that the Big 12 has said. Oklahoma and Texas are founding members of the Big 12, and we value their traditions and history of success. The 8 members strongly desire to retain the current composition, which has proven it can compete at the highest levels. Note, it did not say win. There is a recognition that institutions may act in their own self-interest. However, there is an expectation that members adhere to conference bylaws and the enforcement of grant of rights agreements. This is a time of dramatic change within intercollegiate athletics that presents both opportunities and challenges, and the Big 12 Conference looks forward to continuing to play a major role in its evolution. You're literally saying we have a contract. Here's what OU and Texas are saying. Yeah. Literally, the Big 12 is saying, we have a contract, and OU and Texas are like, we have money. They honestly could not care less. Like, seriously. They're gonna say, like, oh, but we have these grants of rights, and it's like, they don't care. And with Texas, by the way, you've already given in to them. And they're still not happy. You cannot, and I repeat, cannot keep giving in and in and in to them. You're in an abusive relationship with Texas, and you need to break up with them. Unfortunately, you breaking up with them kind of means the end of everything, which I guess is kind of weird. I guess it's a parasitic relationship, actually. Definitely it's a parasitic relationship. It's been sucking you dry for money, and now it's going to leave you for a new host, which it won't be able to suck dry for money, because guess what? Texas, try as you might, you'll never be able to stop you'll never be able to stop Bama from paying off the refs. Okay? Try as you might, you may think you have the money. You do not have the money to pay the refs like Bama does. Man, we're gonna get so screwed. Actually, no, who am I kidding? Like, you think you can pay off SEC refs in Texas like that? Ha! That only happens in College Station. This is gonna be interesting. It's gonna be real interesting. Especially the first time Bama wins the SEC East. Here's a funny story. Did you know that currently the team with the worst record in the conference against Vanderbilt is Auburn? They are 21-21-1. If Texas were to join, Texas would take that spot. They are 3-8-1 all time against the University of Vanderbilt. Or Vanderbilt University, excuse me. That's the way it's put. Yeah. Note, they haven't played since the 1920s. But still, 3-8-1 against Vanderbilt. That one tie, by the way, was a 5-5 tie. Man, 1910 times were weird. So, yeah. Are there any other questions about this whole big SEC expansion thingy? It's kind of confusing, and that's mainly because there's like 5 bits of information. Nothing's really that set in stone and concrete. We're waiting for all this stuff to come out. So we'll probably know sooner rather than later. But still, like, a lot of stuff is just trickling out, and it doesn't help the SEC media days are right now. Actually, funny thing. So Missouri's head coach is using this as a recruiting tactic because he's trying to get the guys who he's battling with. So there are some recruits that he's trying to get that also are thinking about going to Oklahoma or Texas, and he's using this as a thing to basically say, look, even Texas and Oklahoma want to be in the SEC. We're already in the SEC. Come here now. which I think is kind of brilliant. Except Missouri's expected to vote no, too. Here's the thing, by the way. So they need 11 out of 14 SEC teams to vote yes to allow them in the conference. There are 2 teams that are expected to vote no. So they have the votes. If there are no other questions. I shall wait a little for any other questions. If not, we will end this. I gotta record that shit tonight. Welp. Well, that's it. You can find me on Twitter, capital BEN, capital S, capital L, capital A, capital S, PORTS. You can find the pre-recorded podcasts every Friday on Anchor.fm. The link is in the description of the Twitch page. Don't forget that there will be a video, another episode of Y'all Gotta Hear the Story Of, coming out next week. So until then, till next week, probably going to go live on Wednesday. We'll see about that. Till next week, y'all have a fantastic night. I've been Ben Schluter. And bye-bye.